This video is for IXL Activity A1.H.3. It is titled Simplify Variable Expressions Using Properties, and the 3-character code for this activity is Hotel Hotel Romeo. So they are asking us to simplify the following expression here. 4 times the quantity of 6v. Well, many people would just say, okay, well, 4 times 6 is 24, and we need to include the variable v. Now, we would do this through properties. You kind of just, that's more of a shortcut there, but technically, right now the 6 is associated with the v. Well, we could reassociate the 6 and the 4, and do 4 times 6, associate those, and then leave the v out. Then 4 times 6 is 24, and then we bring down the v, and we get 24v. So we need a little bit of using the associative property there, where we regroup the 6 with the 4 instead of with the v here. And then we can go ahead and take the product of 6 and 4 to get 24, then multiply the v to get 24v. On the next one, it says simplify the expression. So, well, we'll go ahead and do this the long way. Right now, the n is associated with the 1. Well, we need to reassociate the 1 with the 6 instead. So we'll use the associative property and rewrite this as n plus the quantity of 1 plus 6. Now we can go ahead and take the sum of 1 and 6, which is 7. And then we just end up with, well, n plus 7. We can't simplify it any further because we do not know the value of n. On the next one here, t is associated with 2. We have 1 plus the quantity of t plus 2. Well, I need to go ahead and get this 2 over by the 1. So the first thing that I need to do is use the commutative property and switch places between the 2 and the t. Now I need to use the associative property and reassociate the 2 with the 1 instead of the t. And then I can take the sum of 1 and 2 for 3 and then bring down my plus t and end up with 3 plus t. Now, most people wouldn't go through all that. They just realize, okay, I can't do anything with the t, but I have a positive 2 and a positive 1. They create positive 3, and I still have the t left over. So that's kind of a shortcut in your mind. So I'm just writing out the steps that you would take and what properties are being used whenever you do this mentally. On the next one, the negative 2 is associated with the variable u. So let's go ahead and reassociate the negative 2 with the constant of 2 over here, and the u is now outside here. Now negative 2 times positive 2 is negative 4, and now we have times u, so we end up with negative 4u. So negative 4u is our final answer. Again, most people just say 2 times negative 2 is negative 4, and the u goes along for the ride. This one here is distributive property. We need to distribute the negative 2 into both the value of 1 and realize that this is a negative 8. I'm going to rewrite this so you can see this is actually 1 plus negative 8s. Because whenever we distribute this negative 2 in, we need to realize this is actually plus a negative so that we realize that we have a negative times negative. So negative 2 times positive 1 is negative 2, and negative 2 times negative 8 is a positive 16, and the s and d goes along for the ride. So we end up at negative 2 plus 16s. Simplify the expression. Well, right now the r is associated with the negative 3. I want to combine this negative 3 over here with the positive 1. So I want to get the negative 3 a little closer, so I'm going to use the commutative property, right? Commute means to change places. So that's a negative 3 plus r. They just switch places. Now I'm going to associate the 1 with the negative 3, and I still have my value of r. Now 1 plus negative 3 is negative 2. Now bring down the plus r, and that's as far as we can go. Negative 2 plus r. Now most people would say, okay, negative 3 plus 1 is negative 2, and we still have the r left over. Let's use the distributive property, 6 times 3, and 6 times, remember this is a plus and negative, so let's rewrite this. 6 times the quantity of 3 plus negative 2u. 6 times 3 is 18. And 6 times negative 2 is going to be, let's use the plus sign here for now. Positive times negative is negative. 6 times 2 is 12. The u goes along for the ride. Now, whenever I rewrite this, I'm going to go ahead and 18. I'm going to take the plus, put it back to a negative, then take the opposite. Whenever I change the sign, I take the opposite of the number that follows it. So the opposite of negative 12 is positive 12. And the u goes along for the ride, so I end up with 18 minus 12u. Here the h is associated with the 5, but I want to get this 5 associated with the negative 6. So let's go ahead and use the associative property and reassociate that 5 with that negative 6. Now let's go h plus and negative 5 plus negative 6. Well, the 5 is positive, the 6 is negative, so we know we can actually subtract those. So 6 minus 5 is 1. And the 6 has the greater absolute value, and it's negative, so I'm going to make my answer negative as well. And I can rewrite this, change the sign from addition to subtraction. The opposite of negative 1 is positive 1, and we end up with h minus 1. Oh, goody goody, decimals, right? So I might be able to do this one in my head. So I have a positive times a negative right here. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this. 3 times negative 0.8z plus 1.8. Okay? So 3 times negative 8z. Well, I know that 3 times 8 is 24. And I also know that positive times negative is negative. But there's one decimal behind there. So if I picture this 0.8 times 3, I would realize that there's one decimal place I need to move over. So move the decimal over one place, and I would get negative 2.4. And, of course, the z needs to go along for the ride. Positive times positive is going to be positive. Now, 3 times 1.8. I'm going to think of this as 3 times 18. So 3 times 18, well, 3 times 15 is 45. And I took off 3 to get there, so I need to do 9. So it should be 45 and 54, I believe. 1.8 times 3, 4, 2, indeed 54. And I'm going to have to move I have one place, decimal place value there, right? So I need to go one place decimal there. And so I'm going to end up with negative 2.4z plus 5.4. If you're not good with decimals, you can always use a calculator, right? Here I have 4 times the quantity of 0.9 minus p. Let's rewrite this. 0.9 plus negative p. You see that's plus and negative, a little bit easier to get that squared away. So 4 times 9 is, what, 36? But I got one decimal place value there, so it's going to be 3.6. And then positive times negative is going to be a negative. And 4 times p is going to be 4p. Now I want to rewrite this as 3.6, not 3.3. Where's my, there it is. 3.6. And I'm going to go change this to subtraction, take the opposite of negative 4 as positive 4, throw the p on there. So 3.6 minus 4p. On the next one, notice that my quantity that needs to be distributed in here is actually to the right of it instead of the left of it. You could go ahead and distribute backwards if you wanted to, right? But I myself, I'm one of those people, I kind of like to have it out here at the front. If you're the same way, you could go ahead and rewrite that. So I end up negative 3 minus 0.1t. And all I did was I just used the commutative property and just switch places, right? And that's what this lesson is all about, is using properties to solve things. Now we want to do the distributive property. So negative 3 times negative 3, well, negative times negative is indeed a positive. 3 times 3 is 9. And then negative, remember this is negative 3 plus negative 0.1t. So that is a negative times a negative, so it's going to equal positive. And 3 times 1 is 3, but I have one decimal place here, so that's going to be 0.3. and the t goes along for the ride, so I end up with 9 plus 0.3t. And actually, as I'm checking my work, I'm doing it mentally in my head, looking back up here. Oh, and indeed, that was my final question for this activity. So, that concludes all of my examples for IXL A1.H.3 Simplify Variable Expressions using Properties. Good luck with your activity.